Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of Bronx Bombers. My name is Joe Rubenstein and it is Monday, April 15th, and the Yankees have lost 4 of their first 5 series, 3 at home against Orioles, Tigers, White Sox. Last time the Yankees lost their first 3 home series was 1982. Yes, I remember it well. Not a banner year. They finished 5th in the AL East that year, and the Bombers right now, you can talk injuries until you're blue in the face. Injuries, by the way, that have been sustained for the most part through normal baseball activities, like in the case of Stanton, swinging a bat. But there's plenty of healthy guys on this team, and quite frankly, they've been embarrassing themselves and depressing their fans with really lackluster performances on both sides of the ball. So, long story short, this team right now is about as much fun to look at as day-old roadkill. And, as far as I'm concerned, everyone, from the owner to the GM, to the coaches, to the training staff, to the players, needs to be held accountable, and they will be, at least on this podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, @BombersPodcast is the handle. You can also send us questions we'll try to answer in our mailbag segment here on the podcast. The next one of those will be May 1st. You can like us on Facebook, subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher. We're on Spotify as well, and as always, you can send your comments and questions to us via Twitter or Facebook. Really, however you'd like to engage with us, we love engaging with you. We are joined this week on Bronx Bombers by our good friend EJ Fagan. Have not heard from him in a while. EJ hosts the awesome Bronx Beat podcast. Highly recommend it. EJ, it's great having you with us again. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back on.
So obviously an unsightly rollout for this 2019 squad, but before we get to that, since we didn't get a chance to talk this winter, I'd love to get your take on the Yankees offseason, starting with 3 of the new acquisitions. I'll just list them one by one, and just give me your response in as much or little detail as you'd like. And let's start with Gold Glover and former batting champion DJ LeMahieu, 2 years, $24 million.
I'm glad they got him. It seemed like LeMahieu was their plan B, their backup infielder, and they overspent on a backup infielder, which was curious at the time, and had lots of theories about what does that mean for Miguel Andujar and all that. But it's great that they did, because we needed one. We need a really good one, and I think he's really good. And I've been pretty happy so far.
Okay, and righty reliever and Brooklyn native Adam Ottavino, 3 years, $27 million.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, I'm still not convinced that he has the control to really be that elite relief pitcher that we hope. I hoped he was, and I think the Yankees certainly could have gotten elsewhere. But I think he's the best reliever they signed, and he looks pretty good so far.
Okay, and lefty starter James Paxton. That was actually a trade for Justice Sheffield, Eric Swanson, and an outfielder whose name I do not recall. Paxton now signed in New York through next season at $8.5 million annually.
Yeah, I think he's really good. I was not a big Justice Sheffield believer, so he's got a lot of talent, but he's had terrible control. He's probably a relief pitcher long term, Justice Sheffield. And, a guy like Eric Swanson would be nice to have as like your 7th string starter at this point, but I don't think that's really necessary. We got an ace.
Speaking of Paxton, I saw yesterday that Carlos Beltran, who's now a special advisor to Brian Cashman, pointed out to Paxton that he'd been tipping his pitches. Can you explain to me, EJ, how pitching coach Larry Rothschild still has a job after not only failing to notice this, but apparently failing to notice that Luis Severino was tipping his pitches for months last year?
I never believe that. I mean, it seems like an excuse every time a pitcher is not pitching well, but it's not, a clear mechanical or injury issue that it's tipping his pitches.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't believe it either, but then Severino kind of admitted it.
Well, I believe he believes it. I'm just not entirely sure that can explain what's going on with Severino. Like Paxton, for instance, hasn't had great control early in the season. And, maybe he's got bad control because whatever batters are fouling off pitches that they normally wouldn't foul off or something like that. But I'm always very skeptical of he's tipping his pitches as an excuse for poor performance. I think Severino wasn't great at the end of last season, so this is going to seem a little glib. But most of the time, I think this is just luck. That there's going to be variation in pitching performance by good pitchers, and occasionally good pitchers aren't going to pitch well, and there might not be a real explanation for it other than they're not pitching well. We don't really try to explain a 2 or 3 week poor streak of a hitter But, James Paxton comes out and has like a rough start or two, and we try to explain it.
I mean, I don't know what's happening with Paxton or whether his struggles will continue, but with Severino, it was more than just one or two bad starts last year. He was really terrible for the entirety of the second half.
And it turns out he might have a serious injury. Now, that serious injury, we don't really know when it started, but I'm a little suspicious that Severino wasn't a little bit injured last year, and therefore he wasn't able to throw with his usual, control and poise.
That's a good point. Okay, back to the offseason. Wanted to get some of your thoughts on some of the re-signings. First of all, lefty starter Jay Happ, who's been terrible so far.
So I've been thinking about this a lot. So Jay Happ is fine. Like I was happy that they re-signed him. It seemed like a good enough deal. It's a 2-year deal. You can't really go wrong with a 2-year deal. But they got the bargain pitcher, and it's clear that there was a cost to getting the bargain pitcher, right? The cost is that you don't get Patrick Corbin, who's off to a great start with Washington and would no doubt be the second best pitcher on this team at the moment. And I'd be a lot more confident with Patrick Corbin going into the rest of the season than I am with Jay Happ. I think Jay Happ will be pretty good. He's been pretty good. He doesn't seem to have any real serious problems to explain why he's had a slow start to the season, other than that he's old. But he's also old, and he might not be any good anymore. And he wasn't that much cheaper than Patrick Corbin. It wasn't like they went out and signed like Clay Buchholz or something for $1 million. Or Gio Gonzalez for a minor league deal. Like, they paid big money for Jay Happ, and if they were just a little bit less cheap, we could have a better pitcher on this team. And it's made all the more apparent by Jay Happ's slow start. But that's all it is at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And this is another deal that I kind of scratched my head over. Sinker ball reliever Zach Britton, 3 years, $13 million annually.
Well, anybody who listens to both of our podcasts will know my thoughts on Jay Britton, and I will give them for you now. Zach Britton, not Jay Britton. Wow. I don't think Zach Britton's any good. I think Zach Britton had a couple of good weeks toward the very end of last season where it looked like he was starting to get his old stuff back, and then finished out a poor postseason, I think a poor last week of September. He doesn't have that killer 98 mile an hour sinking fastball that he made his career on anymore. He's got about 94, 95. Maybe he ticks up a little bit and he starts to look a little bit like his old self, but I'm not sold at the moment. I mean, he's been fine this season. I don't think he'll be a complete bust of a player, but for the money they gave him, I think that's just too much of a commitment. And I don't like the structure of that deal where it could end up being a 3-year deal real easily.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Sonny Gray, whose reputation, I think, was built on basically 2 good seasons several years ago. Britton's good reputation is based almost entirely on 1 great season, 2016, and with his velocity steadily declining and 1 pitch in his repertoire, 3 years seemed frankly crazy to me.
I mean, he had a stretch where he looked like the next Mariano Rivera, right? But there's a reason why Mariano Rivera is in the Hall of Fame and not a lot of other players like him have that kind of longevity. 1 pitch is usually can't get you that far. I think that a more classical reliever who throws the power pitch but also has like a curveball or something or slider really is a better bet than someone like Britton, who you got to count on being a ground ball machine in order to be effective. And I'm just not sure that he's all that good. I mean, I think that the best case scenario for Britton over the next couple of years is realistically like the good version of Paul Quantrill. And I'm fine with that. Like that, there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to have on your that player in your bullpen somewhere, but not for the money that they're paying him.
Okay, Brett Gardner, 1 year, $7.5 million.
Yeah, he's another plan B. It's interesting. The Yankees didn't know that they were going to have 12 players in the DL 3 weeks into the season, hopefully they didn't. And they decided to have a pretty legitimate backup 4th outfielder, and they decided to have a pretty legitimate backup infielder. And in both cases, I'm happy that player was on the roster when Aaron Hicks and Giancarlo Stanton went down. I think that Brett Gardner's gotten a little bit unlucky early in the season. His numbers definitely suggest that there's another 30 or 40 points of batting average at least coming. He's had a great strikeout to walk ratio. I think Brett Gardner's going to be fine, and I've been pretty impressed by his defense. I just hope that once Aaron Hicks and everybody gets back, he starts playing less so he can be rested.
And CC Sabathia, also 1 year, $8 million.
Oh man, I'm going to miss him. He looks so great this weekend. I just had so much fun watching him pitch, and it was clear that every player in the Yankees respects him. and thinks that he is a truly good person and truly good baseball player, mentor, all of those things. And I think that's worth every penny, especially when he's throwing like he did before. And remember, that was like a spring training start for him. He was only allowed to go 70 pitches because he hadn't really fully revved up to the 100 pitches that he'll be able to throw, hopefully, in a week or two. So I'd like to see Sabathia now when he's fully healthy.
And finally, EJ, your thoughts on two extensions. First of all, Aaron Hicks. The Yankees replaced his one-year deal with a 7-year, $70 million extension. So did the length of this deal surprise you, considering how good center fielder prospect Estevan Florial has looked, especially in spring training?
Yeah, and unfortunately, he's not going to be playing a lot for the next couple of months. I think Aaron Hicks doesn't have to be very good to be worth that contract, and he might be very good. The back injury concerns me, and Aaron Hicks obviously doesn't have a great injury history, but he could play 90 games a year for the next 5 years and be worth $70 million easily. When he's been on the field over the last 2 seasons, he's been a top 3 or 4 center fielder in all of the American League. I think the Yankees miss him quite a lot and will really benefit when he comes back to the top of that lineup. So that's a great deal.
And Severino, currently on the shelf with a first rotator cuff inflammation and now a grade 2 lat strain, the latter of which the Yankees say they have no idea how that happened, may not see him until July. But this winter, Severino signed a 4-year, $40 million contract extension. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist here because I like Severino, but I wonder if he signed that below market extension. And we've seen a lot of players sign below market extensions since then, so there might not be anything here. But I wonder if he signed that extension knowing that his shoulder was hurting him. I recently hurt my wrist by typing too much because I'm manly. And the wrist starts hurting. It's really the upper forearm. And then I start adjusting the way that I'm typing. I start kind of holding myself differently. And I screw up my shoulder. And so now my wrist and my shoulder hurts, and my elbow hurts a little bit. My whole arm column's messed up because of this one little tendon I probably tore somewhere in my upper arm. And I think that's what's going on with Severino, or it seems likely to be what's going on with Severino. He has a shoulder injury. He's rehabbing, and he injures his lat, which is right next to the shoulder, while he's rehabbing. That's a story we've seen before. This seems like a fairly serious lat strain. I'm not sure what we're going to get from Severino anytime soon. And we have to remember that there's been like lingering issues or questions about Severino's long-term ability to throw as hard as he does as a starter for a long time now, since before Severino was good. He has a very weird throwing motion. He doesn't use his legs very well, and he throws very, very hard. I'm just very, very concerned about Severino, and hopefully he gets better. But at this point, the Yankees have to plan to not get a lot out of him this season.
Wow, that's interesting coming from you because I know how highly you've spoken of Severino.
He's been better than people realize because he's had these weird stretches where he hasn't been very good. The last 2 seasons, he's been one of the top 3 or 4 starters in the American League.
Okay, so those are the deals the Yankees did make, but were you surprised, EJ, that Cashman seemed to have zero interest in arguably the top 3 guys in the free agent class, Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, and Patrick Corbin? Harper's OPS right now is around 1,300. Machado's been playing very well in San Diego. San Diego's in first place as we speak. And Corbin leads the Nationals in WHIP and ERA, and not far behind Scherzer in strikeouts per 9. Your thoughts on Cashman expressing no apparent interest in any of those 3 guys?
Well, we don't actually know if it's Cashman or if it's Steinbrenner or Steinbrenners, right? I suspect it's Steinbrenners who'd like to keep their money and not spend it on the product in the field. I'm not surprised by them not going after any individual one of those, right? I mean, you can make an argument against Machado. You got Andujar if you think Andujar is really good, et cetera. You can make an argument against Harper, right? The Yankees had outfield spots filled, and I like the idea of moving him to first base, but that didn't really seem to come up. You can make an argument against Patrick Corbin that you can trade some guys who you don't think are very good for James Paxton and basically get Patrick Corbin. But the problem is that all 3 of those, passing on each of those, each independently of the others, means that all of a sudden the Yankees have a lot of money to spend and nowhere to spend it. And we've seen so many players sign contract extensions over the last 2 months to remind us that nobody's hitting the free agent market anytime soon. Mike Trout is not going to be a free agent. Clayton Kershaw is not going to be a free agent. I'm trying to think of some of the other names in here. I mean, Mookie Betts might be a free agent, and maybe that's a place where you can park your money. But for the most part, there's no opportunity for the Yankees to go out there and spend the money that they can spend that they can spend more than any team in baseball and improve this roster. Like, players have to hit free agency for that to happen. And Machado and Harper might be the last 26-year-old, prime of their career, really great superstar free agents to hit to get there anytime soon. Ronald Acuna is going to be 28 or 29 when he hits free agency. Obviously, Albies is going to be like 30 when he hits free agency. These players are not providing the opportunity to teams like the Yankees to sign them. So it's important that when they do, like when that opportunity comes up to bring a superstar talent to this team, you take it, even if it means, the player like Miguel Andujar you have to do something with, because Manny Machado is better than Miguel Andujar. I don't care how. I don't think Miguel Andujar is very good, and it's tragic what happened to him. And I don't wish injury on anybody, but before that happened, you're looking at Pacoda projections, you're looking at Zips projections of Andujar being a 1-win player, and you don't let a 1-win player stand in the way of Manny Machado for the next 10 years. And the worst part about this was how cheap Machado specifically, and really also Harper, signed for, right? Machado signed for 10 years, $300 million, which is not that much money in the grand scheme of things in baseball. If you count for inflation, that's the size of the Teixeira deal, and Machado's better than Teixeira. It's not that different from the Sabathia deal. It's way, way smaller than what A-Rod got. I mean, these guys are going for relative bargains, and the Yankees are allowing the San Diego Padres to outbid them. I don't understand it, and I think it's just pure greed on the Steinbrenner's part.
That's really interesting. I wasn't looking at it so much from the greed angle. I grew up with George at the helm, and he always spent, what he needed and then some. I just assumed that Cashman was overvaluing the pieces on this team right now and just didn't think we needed any of those three guys. But you're saying this was a cost-cutting move based on profitability.
Well, I mean, it would be a profitable enterprise if you could sign Machado and Harper, and I forget what the Yankees ran last year, but they'd still have, tens of millions of dollars in profit left over before you would sell more tickets, before you make the postseason, before all that kind of stuff happens. I don't think that the problem is not making a profit. I mean, George was willing in the mid-2000s to run a payroll so high compared to the rest of Major League Baseball that I think I saw projections the Yankees actually didn't make a profit some of those years. That's not what I'm asking for. In fact, I don't even think it's good for baseball for the Yankees to go out there and spend what they probably could spend, which is like, $300 million or more. And they could probably still make money on that because, I don't think it was good when the Yankees were twice as big as like the fifth largest team. But I don't think that as a Yankee fan and somebody who subscribes to the Yankees on MLB.com, who occasionally makes his way back to New York to go see games and pays a lot of money for all that, I don't think that it's okay to be the seventh largest payroll in baseball, or whatever they were last year and whatever they're projected to be this year. They spent a lot of money in the short term this offseason. So they signed guys like LeMahieu, like Gardner, right, to play backup roles for more than you normally would pay a bench player. But they didn't make a long-term commitment there. They signed LeMahieu for 2 years. They signed J. Happ for 2 years, right? Eventually, you got like that money's going to come off the books. And maybe it's used to like extend Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres and all that. Those extensions won't be all that inexpensive. I think we're looking at a long-term Yankee payroll that is in the top third of baseball. But I don't see any reason to believe that they're going to be spending, like the Dodgers or the Red Sox or their competitors.
And I don't know about you, but it's not at all clear to me that with the methodology they've been using, that they've constructed a championship team. In fact, I have serious doubts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a 100-win team. I think the Yankees had the second best team in the American League coming into this season. Now, they couldn't anticipate the injuries, and I think they actually did a pretty decent job preparing for a rash of injuries. But the Red Sox are also a 100-win team, and the Astros are a 100-win team. And you're every win counts against those guys.
And don't forget the Rays; they could certainly win 100 games.
Oh God, the Rays are great, and the start that the Rays have gotten off to, even if you think the Rays are a little bit worse than the Yankees got a lot of ground to make up on the Rays now.
Let me ask you something, EJ, because everyone's always telling me on Twitter and Facebook it's early, you can't lose the division in April. Calm down. I believe you can lose the division in April. I mean, let's say the Yankees are on September 15th were tied for first with Tampa, and then dropped all but one or two of their last 15 games. Everyone would say, well, the poor finish killed them, and nobody would contradict that, but the losses count the same whether they're in September or April. And it could very well be that this poor start could mean yet another season without a division championship. I mean, whether you lose in September or April, it's equally bad. Or, I mean, am I missing something here?
I mean, the math is pretty simple, right? So if you think that the Yankees are a 100-win team and you think that the Rays are a 95-win team, which was probably about what I was expecting kind of going into the season, well, then for the rest of season, even if they play like the 95-win team and the 100-win team that they were supposed to be, the Yankees are 5.5 games back of the Rays, right? And so that means that, like at this point, every game that you're losing, you're giving the Rays that little bit of competitive advantage. Now small sample sizes are important, and the Yankees, I think, once they get healthy, will be a dominant team. Like I still have confidence in this roster to be that good. But I don't know when they're going to be healthy.
The other issue is the level of teams, with the exception of Houston, that are beating us right now. I mean, 3 bona fide rebuilding teams have dominated us in the Bronx.
Yeah, 6-9 against the Orioles, the Tigers, and the White Sox with one good team kind of sprayed in there. It's not good, obviously, but I think that the Yankees are putting out a team that has Giovanni Urshela, Austin Romine, Greg Bird, and Mike Tauchman in the lineup every day. And that's not good. Like, that team's not going to win a lot of games. That bottom half of that lineup looks a lot like the Baltimore Orioles, and you're really, really relying on Aaron Judge, Luke Voit, and Gleyber Torres to do a lot of the work for you, and DJ LeMahieu, I guess. And that team's not going to win a lot of games until they start getting players back.
Yeah, well, the reality is, though, that we've had leads in these games. Our pitching has been unable to sustain those leads. It's almost like clockwork. When we score, we give it right back up in the next half inning.
Yeah, Chad Green's not looking good.
Oh, man.
There were warning signs on Chad Green coming into this season. StatCast really didn't like Chad Green last season. They thought he got kind of lucky. And I didn't believe that, right? I saw those numbers and I said, I still think he's pretty good because he's got a low ERA and he's getting runners out, he's getting batters out, and StatCast can be wrong or has a small sample on him or whatever. But it's looking pretty prescient right now.
Yeah, his strikeout totals are way down too.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that bullpen. I'm less concerned about it though than I am about some of the starting pitchers who are struggling, right? I mean, specifically J-Hap. He's got that 8.76 ERA. J-Hap doesn't have to be that much worse than he was last year to be a bit of a disappointment. So if he has like a 4.5 ERA in the season, his rotation looks a lot worse. But let the team get healthy is my thought. Like small samples are small. I'm a social scientist in my day job, right? I'm supposed to understand that a sample size of like 17 games is basically meaningless and anything can happen in 17 games and I shouldn't read anything into it. Like, that's not emotionally how I feel about it, but I know deep down somewhere intellectually I should probably just ignore the numbers right now.
Okay, 2-part question. First part negative, second part positive. Negative, a healthy Greg Bird right now is hitting 171 with 1 RBI. Would it be safe to say at this point that Greg Bird is a bust, that he will not be a part of this young core that Cashman is trying to build a championship team around, or is that prognosis too hasty?
He's got a 43-ish% strikeout rate right now, so not good. I think he's not looking good right now. I think he is ticketed for AAA as soon as the Yankees can afford to send him to AAA. Maybe he hits well in AAA. Maybe he does great. I suspect at some point there's a DFA coming for Greg Bird. It's terrible because I like the guy. I think we need a left-handed hitter. I think he's a better defensive first baseman than Luke Voit. But with Luke Voigt's struggles kind of early in the season, he's looked like a player who's going to be at least a contributor. Maybe he's not slugging 600 like he was last season, but he's got a 773 OPS. He's hit the ball hard. I've been okay with Luke Voit so far.
I think he's leading the team in RBIs right now.
Yeah, I don't really care about that personally. I mean, he's batting behind Aaron Judge, so he's going to lead the team in RBIs.
That's a good point.
But he's at least going to be an effective major league player, and we can't say that about Greg Bird right now. Problem is you got to replace him with somebody. Giancarlo Stanton might be back soon, though we haven't really heard any news on him. Aaron Hicks is about to go play in some rehab games. We don't know how long that's going to take. There's really no one else to call up at the moment. So I think he's on the team until guys get healthy enough that you could have a DH and first baseman that's not Greg Bird.
And positive, is Clint Frazier as good as he looks at the plate? He's in very limited playing time this year. He's hit very well.
Yeah, I think Clint Frazier's really good. Like, I mean, last year, in the middle of the concussion issues that he was having at AAA, he was an elite like 950 OPS hitter or whatever it was. That's great. That is the player that was as advertised with Clint Frazier, and he's in limited time basically hit like that so far this season. Visually, he looks like he's guessing. I don't know about you. Like, he just swings and makes some like big wild swings at pitches.
Yeah, and Duhar's like that too a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think Duhar is very good. So I'm a little concerned about Clint Frazier. I don't think there's really any. I think it's good timing for him to hit 3 home runs right now, because he's not going to be losing playing time anytime soon, right? You're going to have one or two of your DH and corner outfielders out for the foreseeable future. And Clint Frazier is clearly ready to have a shot at the major leagues. And I think that, if he has a good couple of weeks, that he could stick on the roster for the full season. But, he needs to strike out a little less. He needs to stop swinging a little bit less wildly. He needs to take more walks. He's done all that in the minor leagues. So I have confidence that the talent is there. But the 3 home runs haven't sold me completely yet.
Okay, final question, EJ. Looking around at our division, Tampa, who we just talked about, has started the season scorching hot after winning 90 games last year, and the world champion Red Sox, who come to the Bronx on Tuesday, have been ice cold. Their starting pitching has been terrible, and their hitting has not been great either. Which of those two trends, the Rays' stellar play or the Red Sox difficulties, do you have more faith in, or neither, or both?
I think the Red Sox will get better, but I've always been I've been skeptical of the Red Sox, even during their really amazing season last year. They had a lot of players kind of play out of their mind last year. Their PECOTA numbers were pretty low coming into this year. I think they were basically even with the Rays, about 6 or 7 wins behind the Yankees in that projection coming into this year. Chris Sale does not look good. They gave him a big extension, so I have to imagine that they at least thought that he was healthy, but he sure does not look good right now. That team is beatable. That bullpen is very beatable. I mean, we talk about our bullpen issues, and we don't have the bullpen that they have. The Rays, on the other hand, are scary to me. Agreed. This team is stacked. They have so many good players that they can't play them every day. Like Yandy Diaz looks like he's like ready to have a big breakout season. He's not even an everyday player. Brandon Lau is like slugging 600, and he's not even an everyday player, and they don't have a place to put him. This is a team with Kevin Kiermaier in the outfield. It's a team that just got Tommy Pham out of nowhere last season, and he's playing amazing. It's a team with probably the best pitcher in the division in Blake Snell. They're the smartest team in baseball, and they're showing it. The Yankee fan in me wants them to play to lose and to not knock the Yankees out. The baseball fan in me says, I kind of like the smart underdog being the closest thing to the Moneyball team since the book came out in 2002.
Yeah, well, they're smart, and they have to be smart because they don't have any money. I mean, Tampa has the lowest payroll in baseball at $60 million. That's $162 million less than the Red Sox, okay? And I think $150 million less than the Yankees, and look what they're doing. I mean, I have nothing but admiration for how they're running that team on basically brain power.
The Yankees have the luxury of a little bit of BS, right? Where they can say, no, we care about starting pitchers starting baseball games. And because it's always been that way, and because our starting pitchers like to start baseball games, and we like to have that mentality, we're not going to use an opener. Even early in the season, when there was a couple of starts with Loaizaga pitching, with Domingo Germán pitching, even Sabathia pitching a couple days ago, where clearly they should have used an opener. The Rays just don't have that luxury. They can't say no, we're going to play traditional and and play the way that we kind of want the game to be played, or we were taught that the game is being played. No, they have to break all the rules and kind of optimize their team in a way that very few other teams in baseball are willing to do. And I respect the hell out of that. They are playing a bit on a knife's edge with their pitching staff. They could have a really, really good pitching staff, or they could have a whole bunch of guys who just aren't great relievers. So they're really relying a lot on a very deep set of very good relievers. And we're seeing this year with the Yankee bullpen that it's very difficult to rely on a large number of good but still middle relievers to be consistent game to game and to kind of put up that performance year in, year out that, the guys like Dylan Betances and Aroldis Chapman and those types of guys are able to do, because every year you're going to have a Chad Green turn into a pumpkin.
All right. Great job, EJ. Great having you on as always. Love your podcast. That's the Bronx Beat podcast, which all of our listeners should check out and subscribe to. EJ, thanks so much for being with us again. Hopefully next time we're over 500 and have some happier material to work with.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
And that'll do it for this week's episode of Bronx Bombers. Again, don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, find us on Spotify, follow us on Twitter @BombersPodcast is the handle, like us on Facebook as well, and thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you again on Wednesday, May 1st. Take care.